back to Sledgehammer Horror, guys. I am Ken Sledge, and let's talk horror. Today, I am joined by the amazing Brendan Sexton III. How you doing today, man?
I'm doing awesome, man, and I want to applaud your T-shirt choice today. That's a very good choice. Pretty
Works
darn
out,
cool.
doesn't it?
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I'm a little jealous. I'm not gonna lie.
There's got to be something about people with the prefix of sledge or suffix of the third, I mean, because those thirds, those guys are handsome as hell. I don't know what it is, but
Oh yeah,
once you've
that's
been
right. You're a
labeled the
third.
third, yeah,
Yes,
I am the third. My
yeah.
son is Kenny the fourth. So there's just something about those thirds, man.
I met a fourth. I used to be friends with a fourth, actually. So,
Well,
but yeah,
in my
there
case,
is.
I could easily admit the fourth is much better than the third.
That's beautiful. That's cool. That's really cool.
Well, man,
Nice to
I
meet
gotta
you.
let everybody
Nice
know
to
this is
meet you,
so.
Trey. Nice to meet you, Trey.
I like it.
Trey
For
dog.
those of you that don't know, Brendan is in the new film Don't Breathe 2, which is in theaters right now. And if you haven't seen it yet, I've made this very open. I am a huge fan of this movie. I think that the twists and turns that come along with this movie are great. I think Don't Breathe was phenomenal. I think Don't Breathe 2 tops it, and that's not lip service. You can check anything I said before I had Brendan on here. So we're not going to get spoilery on it. But what can you tell us
Okay.
about the filming process of Don't Breathe 2?
I mean, being on the set of Don't Breathe 2 was amazing because we were shooting it early on in the pandemic between July and October of 2020 and in and around Belgrade, Serbia, and a country I'd never been to, a city that I fell in love with wonderful, great actors who were just great actors, but also really wonderfully decent human beings. And we're all sweethearts in real life, but absolutely deplorable people on screen, with the exception of Madeline Grace, who's the 11-year-old hero of the film, so to speak. And yeah, we just had a wonderful time, and it was physically and emotionally taxing and spiritually
Mm-hmm.
exhausting, as you would expect making a film like this. And I loved being a part of it and grateful to have been a part of it.
And it's amazing because from what I've gotten to know of you, we've been having conversations lately. We've been conversing, and you are one of the sweetest, nicest dudes in the world. And that shows your talent as an actor because I completely, again, spoiler free, but I can say this, I despised you in the film.
Oh,
So
good.
that means you did your job the right way.
Yes. I'm happy to haunt you and happy to have you hate me. The hate is welcome and a good sign to your character. Actually, it says a lot about you that you hated me, and so yeah, I love having people hate me on film. I guess it's kind of
Well,
my
like I
bread
said,
and butter. It's how I
it
earn my
means you
living.
absolutely did your job because you were despicable in the film, but you're a great guy. And for those of you that haven't
Thank
seen
you.
him, I mean, so many other great films you've been a part of: Empire Records, the very, very heavy Boys Don't Cry, Session 9, so
Yes,
many others, man. And you've been somebody I've been a fan of for a long time. And to be able to
that's
finally have
awesome.
this sit down conversation with you is so amazing for me. Now, again, I know that things are kind of under wraps right now, so you can't get too deep into anything. But do you have any projects coming up here in the near future that you can talk about, or is everything still kind of wrapped up at this point?
Okay, two things. Real briefly, I just wrapped a film called God is a Bullet, directed by Nick Cassavetes, starring Nikolai Waldau and Jamie Foxx and Micah Monroe and Ethan Suplee and Carl Glusman and a bunch of other extremely talented actors. And I play yet again another deplorable, sadistic character. So, but and this time in a very like campy way, and I got to have a lot of fun just being so brutal. It's so brutal that there's no way it can't be humorous. It's
Okay.
based on a book by Boston Turan, and it's a real passion project of Nick Cassavetes. He's been trying to make the movie for 10, 15 years now, and he finally got to make it. So we just wrapped that. And in a week or two, I actually have a comedy, an existential comedy coming out on streaming services. It's a re-release of a new special cut that's 15 minutes shorter and leaner and meaner. It's called Welcome to Happiness, and it stars Keegan Michael Key and Nick Offerman and Olivia Thirlby and Molly Quinn and Kyle Gallner and Josh Brenner and Paget Brewster. All these wonderful actors are in the film, and I get to play sort of the dramatic relief, if you will, in the film.
Yeah.
And it's a really beautiful, sweet film, and I hope people go see it, because the people that do see it and like it, they don't just like the film. Oh, that was good. It hits home. It does something poignant and pointed for them. So I hope people see it.
Yeah. Do you know what streaming service is going to be available on?
I think it's going to be available on all, but it will certainly be on Amazon. I know that for sure.
Well, you have my word. I will watch it and I will text you right afterwards and let you know what I thought of it.
Cool. I'd love to hear what you think about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Brendan, we know what you're doing in the future with some of these new films that you're working on, and we know what you got going on right now with Don't Breathe 2. But my friend, I want to take it back to the past, and I want to talk about what got you started in the horror genre, your first horror movie. And this is a movie I will go to blows with as being a traumatic horror movie, even though it does have comedy aspects. But your first horror movie was
Ghostbusters. And I love that you're sticking up for me, because as we were discussing the format of your show, I said, maybe my first horror film was Ghostbusters, and you immediately threw down a gauntlet and said, yes, that's absolutely a horror film. So I appreciate that, because it's not cool. It's not like a trauma film. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like Toxic Avenger, man. My parents used to wrap me in Toxic Avenger diapers when I was little. Like, I definitely lose a lot of street cred saying that
I was so deep in Toxic Avengers, I carried a mop around with me, man.
Yeah, that's right. I was sweeping legs and busting heads with a mop since I was 4.5 months old. So I appreciate that you threw down the gauntlet in that way, and said that Ghostbusters is absolutely a horror film.
The two that I find, I'll say the top three that I argue the most that are horror movies that people want to argue with me will be Ghostbusters, the original Terminator. That's totally a slasher film to me.
That's a good argument. Okay.
And then Jurassic Park. I think Jurassic Park is totally a horror movie.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's definitely a horror movie.
Yeah. Those three to me, I will fight till the end of time. They have with Ghostbusters, you have the comedy element. But I still say if you take out Bill Murray, Harold Ramis, you take these guys out of the equation and you don't have that Saturday Night Live delivery of the humor that these guys have, the comedy bits fall way short compared to the horror aspects of Ghostbusters. So I'm 100% on your team. The first time I saw that librarian turn into that monster, that completely fucked me up as a kid. I remember I cried the first time I saw that scene as a little kid, hands down.
Yes. So I saw the film in theaters, I guess in 1985 it was. That's when it came out, maybe. And I was 5 years old at the time. And the librarian, she still haunts me to this day, man. I have chills thinking about it. And I think they were really smart with the horror aspects of it, because they nailed that. That was a jump scare with incredible effects that were realistic and terrifying and horrifying. Yes. Absolutely horrifying. And then they let the pressure out, and then they introduced Slimer or whatever, and let it be more comedic and more easy to digest. But they absolutely went balls so well and nailed that moment with the librarian, and it's so good.
I always compare it to Evil Dead 2. Everybody's like, oh, Evil Dead 2 is totally a horror movie. I'm like, dude, Evil Dead 2 has just as much comedic relief in it as Ghostbusters does. And that's
absolutely.
Yeah, you don't have to be, a bunch of titties, a bunch of blood, a bunch of gore to be a horror movie. As long as you can genuinely put fear in me. And that's what this movie did. This movie
should be the criteria, right?
Yes, exactly. Horror is the hardest genre to knock down for me, because comedy, you make me laugh, I consider it a comedy. Sci-fi, if you got something futuristic or spacey, that's sci-fi to me. A rom-com, if you're going to make me feel something in my chest, that's a romantic comedy to me. But horror, you can't say, well, it's got to have death. The Lion King has death in it. You can't say, well, it's got to have jump scares. Pee-wee's Big Adventure has the Large Marge jump scare. So, horror to me is the hardest one to really lock down as this is a horror movie. But when I watch a movie and I leave that movie or I'm done with that movie and I have that genuine feeling of, anxiety and fear inside of me, that's a horror movie. And watching the Stay Puffed Marshmallow Man walk through the streets of New York, knocking everything over. I mean, like you said, they give the comedy reliefs, right before, what the hell did you do, Ray? Stuff like that. But when you see him you have that, oh my gosh, it's a huge marshmallow. But then you're like, look what he's doing to that city. It's very
Yeah.
Godzilla-esque, you know?
And the lead characters who are expressing, who are the expression for the audience on screen are terrified themselves,
Yes.
and they are in awe of this terror that's about to be unleashed, because it comes in such an innocent package, but it is,
Yes.
yeah, but it is not innocent. It's terrifying, and people are about to go down, and they're horrified not just at what they're watching, but at themselves for having unleashed it, for
Right.
being
And
responsible
like
for
you
it.
said, they know this is their responsibility. They're the
Yes,
ones that have to take care of this. You know, they
yes.
can't run away now.
No, no, they're the ones who summoned the Stay Puft Marshmallow. They willed him into existence. Inadvertently, they tried their best not to, but they did. And
Right.
and and they're the only ones equipped to fight him, of course. But it is their responsibility because they birthed him, for
Mhm.
sure. Yeah.
And it's funny because like you said, we talk about Slimer, we talk about Stay Puft, but one scene I want to talk about, we'll talk about it in a second. So I want to ask you a question real quick. When it
Sure.
comes to Ghostbusters, we got 5-year-old Brendan sitting in the movie theater. Which scene
Yes.
was it that affected you the most from Ghostbusters?
It's still the librarian scene. I mean, there's other scenes that are just amazing. And then watching it as an adult, there's scenes that then become your favorite. But I did the dumb thing. Like my 12-year-old sister was kind enough, to put her hand over my eyes, and I was dumb enough. I was stupid and dumb enough to like peek through her fingers, and I absolutely paid for it, and it's all my fault. And I, I genuinely was so terrified of it that I couldn't see scary movies. I
Right.
couldn't see horror films for quite a few years after that. I really couldn't. And like, it really did stick with me. It really did. It really
And like
did.
I said, you go from watching, me and you are around the same age. You go from
Yeah.
watching, He-Man and the Masters of the Universe and Thundercats to
Right.
seeing this. Like that's
Right.
quite the jump.
Absolutely. Absolutely. This ain't no heroic cartoon. Like
Right.
I thought, and like I think up until I was 4, I thought, you could go into the TV, or that the people in the television could come out to me, or like there's still some ambiguity as to what is like real and how this
Yeah.
television movie thing works, and like I thought ET was real, and I cried when ET had to go home. Like I wept for a
Mhm.
week, and
Yeah, dude.
so so then so I'm I barely even understand the concept of movies, let alone horror films, and
Right.
and and so then to see that at 5, which was probably maybe a little irresponsible on my parents' part. I don't know. I don't know. I'm not judging. I don't know, but so I'm not even being equipped to necessarily deal with the reality that this is a recorded fantasy
Sure.
for our viewing pleasure, and then to have this huge effective jump scare coupled with horrifying monster is just
Yes. And it's
like
funny you talk about
terrifying.
not realizing the difference. That for me, I remember the day I learned that I was watching a TV show at my aunt's house, and Lou Diamond Phillips was in the TV show, and I was like, "How the hell that guy died in La Bamba? That's Richie. How is
Right.
he here?" And then
What's he doing here?
my aunt had to explain to me, they're actors. That's not the real people. And I just remember, I'll never forget that. I was probably 6 or
Yeah.
7, and it
Yeah.
completely blew my mind at that moment. I was like, how is Richie Valens not dead? I remember the plane crash, and his
I
brother was
watched
like,
it. Well,
Richie! Like, I remember
yes.
it.
Yeah. Yeah. So oof. Oof. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And
I have
another
to
scene
admit,
that,
so I admit, like I did stay away from horror films for a long time, and it took a long time for me to come back, actually.
Mhm. And another scene that people don't often talk about with Ghostbusters, one I was going to talk to you about, the one that really got me as a kid, is when
Yeah.
Dana's sitting on that chair and the hands come up through the chair and they grab her, and then they grab her
Yeah.
mouth, and that chair starts spinning and it comes back into the room. Dude, I was
Yes.
fucking terrified at that
That's a
moment.
great effect. That's one of the better effects of the film. And
Mhm.
I when I saw that recently as an adult, I was actually really impressed by it. I was like, oh yeah, this moment, and that is horrifying because you don't expect it, and then they just come out, and oh, it is absolutely terrifying. I remember, when Dana's haunted by what's the name, Dozer
Yeah, Gozer.
or Gozer, when she's haunted by Gozer, uh, just like I remember that being admittedly erotic, but also like very creepy and disorienting because
Yeah.
it's not uncanny valley with like her person, like uncanny valley with the circumstances. Like she seems human, but is not completely human, and she's floating on the bed and writhing in all this way, and it's very unsettling and very creepy
Hmm.
and pretty cool.
Right. But one of my favorite things I can say about this movie, like I said, Bill Murray is probably my favorite actor of all time. I think that
Good
when it comes to,
choice.
he's just, and I had the pleasure of meeting him. I live in Michigan, and I'm not going to say any names, but his sister is a nun at a college university around here. And he was in
Cool.
town visiting his sister, and we ran into him at a bar. And he was just the funniest, kindest person to talk to. He was very down to earth, very cool. And one of the moments from this movie that will always stick with me is when they're walking on the rooftop and Ray walks up to the stairs and he's like,
Hey, where these stairs go?
and Bill Murray's like,
They go up.
just that little scene
That's awesome.
that
That's
always stuck
so
with me, man.
awesome.
So,
You
Brendan,
know,
we talked about your first horror movie, which was Ghostbusters. But
right.
now I want to throw a little bit of curveball at you here.
Do
What's your favorite scary movie? Gotta go scream
it.
on you. What's your favorite scary movie of
uh,
all time?
I know quite a few people whose favorite scary movie is Scream. Um, Besides Don't Breathe 2, that's my favorite scary movie. You know,
Can't say
I'll,
real quick that Don't
yeah,
Breathe 2. And again, I'm not, this isn't lip service because you're here. My wife and my
yeah,
friends that went and seen it with me can attest to this. The anxiety that this movie gives you. Don't Breathe 2 is a phenomenal, like I said, Don't Breathe is amazing. I love Don't Breathe. I think that the anxiety you feel from that movie is real. But this one, you take that and you inject. I'm a father of an 8-year-old and 1-year-old little girl. I have a 13-year-old son. I have an 8-year-old and a 1-year-old little girl. So
yeah.
for me, I always put myself in these situations, in these movies. And, when you inject the thought of a little girl being a part of this
Oof,
and what's going on with her.
yeah.
And again, I'm not going to spoil anything, guys, but the box scene had my heart racing.
Oh my
My
God.
my skin was crawling. There's so much about this movie that is just so wonderful. Fede Alvarez, obviously, masterpiece, but the perfect cast, the way that you guys did your jobs, you were so believable. And
Thank you.
down to the dogs, everything that you guys did in that film is, I see why the movie's getting the praise that it's getting, because you guys say it yourselves, man. You were dishonorably discharged from a dishonorable war. Makes you pretty honorable, don't you think? So in their minds, at some point,
Oh,
people are doing the right thing in their minds, even though they're morally the wrong, complete fucking wrong things. But this is a movie that could show you the humanity behind. And again, there's a certain character in this movie that really shows his humanity at the end.
mm,
Some things come before other things, and the
right.
humanity that you feel in some of these scenes in this movie to the most inhumane people. It's amazing writing, it's amazing directing, and it's amazing acting. So I'm a huge fan of Don't Breathe 2. I can't wait to get a Blu-ray with a bunch of special features because I'm a fucking nerd like that. I can't wait to watch this with commentary so I can learn all these things about the behind the scenes stuff that you guys did. And I'm a very big fan. So if you wanted to say Don't Breathe 2, I'd run with it. That's a great fucking movie.
That's amazing, man. That's a very high compliment. That's so cool. You raised up lots of great points that I wanted to address, but there's just too many. I don't even think I can at this point, except to say, like, yeah, there's a lot of dark, dark grays in this film. There's a lot of dark grays. And oh, you addressed the little girl in the box in the beginning of the film in the first or second act, and that is absolutely, as a parent, I can't imagine what that's like watching. And it's also cool you brought up watching it as a parent, because a lot of this film thematically is about parenting and becoming your own person and becoming an adult, and maybe becoming an adult before you're ready to become an adult, but circumstances force it upon you. And so it's like a lot of it's like what is a parent, like what does it mean to be a guardian? And what qualifies as a parent? Is it nature? Is it nurture? Is it circumstances? Is it, and can you parent yourself, and those kinds of things? Like those are,
and that's another thing.
Questions.
Not only, and this as a father of a 13-year-old son, I'm really starting to realize this now. Another theme that this movie has is it's not only what a parent can do for a child, but what a child can do to that parental figure to change who that person is and make that person a better person, even if they've done some of the worst things in the world. Can that love of a child change that person for the good or the bad?
Oof. Yeah. Big question, man. Big question. But like, I don't know if we see it, necessarily in reality, if we see it with the most despicable, deplorable people that we know in this world, but we do see it with our friends, often, and when they raise kids or when we raise kids, and how they do have an effect on you. And so, yeah, it's, it actually might be tough for people to watch as a parent. Now that I think about it, and my heart goes out to the parents of young children who watch this film, to be honest.
Yeah. And it's one of those things where, just like The Exorcist, watching The Exorcist as a young boy and then watching The Exorcist as a parent of little girls is two completely different viewings of that film.
I imagine.
Completely different viewings.
Like I can, when you have just such a small, vulnerable, fragile human being, and especially when they're your own flesh and blood and you've known them since day one, and then to have them be sick or in a precarious position or be in danger, and then and then to have that danger be heightened to a life or death circumstance. Like, I don't know if my heart could take it, man, to be honest. So I don't know how you did it, man.
No, I got one more question for you, Brendan, because I know that we both have other things to do. I know you're a very busy guy, and the fact you've taken any time out to hang out with me means a lot, man. But before I get into this last question, I do want to say one more time, I do give Don't Breathe 2 the SledgeHammer stamp of approval. I really hope if you guys haven't seen it, you will give it a shot, because I genuinely love this film. My wife and my friends, we all genuinely love the film. And it's to the point where when the movie ends, you're kind of bummed out that it's over because you had so much fun on that ride. So as soon as it comes out on Blu-ray, I promise I will be checking it out again and again with all the special features and all the commentary, because I love what Fede Alvarez does with his behind the scenes work, whether it be on The Evil Dead or Don't Breathe, on those special features that he had. He has a lot of amazing things, and getting to watch you behind the scenes, I'm sure will be a whole lot of fun too. So before we end this, my friend, we're going to go back to Ghostbusters. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to rank this on a skull count. 0 being the worst, 5 being the best. Now, here's the catch, Brendan. We're not critics right now. We're not judging it on score, acting, production. What we're ranking this on is what this movie means to you and how much this movie affected you on your first viewing. So 0 to 5 skulls, Ghostbusters, what would your ranking be?
That's a great meter. And it's absolutely 5 skulls for sure.
I figured it was.
It's like such a formative time for me, and just like Sigourney Weaver, and Rick Moranis, that dude is hilarious, and it's just so funny and haunting. And then, to introduce the way they introduced Bill Murray's character, like, I don't know if you could introduce a character that way these days and still have the audience cheer for him, because he's not the nicest guy. He's actually pretty much a POS,
he's kind of a chauvinistic pig when you first meet him.
He's a chauvinistic pig. Thank you. He's absolutely 100% a chauvinistic pig, and somehow he's charming and pulls it off, and you end up rooting for him, and it's just so. Yeah, it's definitely 5 skulls for sure.
Yeah. Gotta be. So I hope everybody had a great time watching this. Brendan, I had such a great time. I do want to remind everybody, I have all Brendan's social media links down here in the description. So make sure you're checking
all
him out.
1.5 social media links that I have.
Make sure you're giving him a follow, liking what he does, because this guy's got a lot of cool stuff coming up in the future. Brendan, don't go anywhere. I got a couple more questions for you.
Cool.
Everybody else, as always, keep talking horror, stay what you are, and we'll see you guys soon.